Hello everyone, there have of course been more character announcements, so welcome to our Feng primer. There has been a lot of Feng action in recent months since he's had some pretty big power creep going on, and no doubt he'll be strong in Tekken 8. He's a quick, powerful character with a mix of kind of everything. Plenty of stance stuff, plenty of poke stuff, plenty of mix-up tools, even if he doesn't have something like the traditional Hell Sweep game, plenty of punishing options, and so on. There's really no wonder why he's a hot pick these days, so no time like the present to learn him. As with our other primers, this video should give you a good quick rundown on the character to jumpstart your learning and get you playing some matches. We will keep the technical lingo to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but you should already know a little bit about the game, just not necessarily the character. If you are brand new to Tekken, check out the resource links in the video description below. I've included several, including a system basics guide that operates as a tutorial for the whole game since Tekken doesn't really have that built in. To me, I think it's incredibly important to go over that before trying to tackle character specific guides. But enough of all that, let's begin. Feng is a highly evasive and big-time counter-hit character. This works because his poke game is insane, which in turn makes opponents want to respond and give him those counter-hit opportunities. So with that, let's talk about pokes. First, his jab options are rather strong. The second hit of his 1-2 sticks out a lot farther than you'd think, and for a punish, 1-2-2 is great and can go to back turn. 1-1, although not safe, is a strong high mid, the second hit being a counter hit launcher. Since it's the start of his 10 string, you'll also see Feng's continue it to mess with punishing decisions. 1-3 is probably your best option though, since it's a safe, natural combo, and the second hit can splat or give a small float on counter hit. Moving on from jabs, his down forward 1 is a core move that holds everything together. It's just a tad slower than a typical down forward 1, but it's still 0 on block, sizable advantage on hit, and gives a butt stun on counter hit. It can be used as a safe poke, but it can also be used to set up just about any follow-up. Back 4 is just as common. It's the same speed as down forward 1, also safe, but doesn't give as much advantage on hit. However, its main feature is that it tracks like crazy. It's a superbly annoying move and very easy to use. If you need something with even more range, down forward 4 is only slightly slower, and it's safer than back 4 and gives better advantage on hit. It also gives you string options if you want to take the risk to get that extra damage. If you really want range, you also have forward 3, which is considerably slower than all these other options, but as you can see, it goes a lot farther and has an even better situation on block and hit than down forward 4. And if you're really confident it'll hit, you can finish it for a launch. Just be aware that that is really risky. Speaking of string options, there are a handful of other moves to consider too. Forward 2 and forward 2-1 are part of a safe little string that if you hit either of those counter hit, the last hit will combo. Down forward 2-2 is a safe natural combo, chunky damage if it hits, especially at the wall. Down back 1 works a lot like down forward 4, but down back 1 can lead to a lot more damage and it can transition to stances, which we'll get to shortly. But we also cannot forget about the lows, which are very annoying. Down 2, despite being on the slow-ish side, is probably the best of these. It does solid damage, high crushes, is fairly low risk, has good range, puts you in full crouch, and will knock down on counter hit, which can actually lead to a small combo. So it does a lot. 1+4 is about that same speed, gives a nice chunk of damage, and puts you at good advantage to continue pressure, although it is much riskier than down 2. Down back 3 is your other scary low, similar risk to 1+4, but it's quick, still a high crush, has really silly range, gives substantial advantage on normal hit, and on counter hit goes into a hit throw for a sizable chunk of damage. Also, another one of those moves that leaves him in crouch. Then you have your little toe taps like down 4, which can certainly have their place, you just won't see them as often. Either way, you have plenty to work with for low pokes, but this is a good segue into stances because the most common is also mostly used for poking, and that's his crouch dash or CD, done simply as quarter circle forward. Now there is some mix-up potential here because you have CD1, which is a chunky high crushing low shoulder, which can launch on counter hit, and CD2, which is just a straight up mid launcher. Both are the same speed, but the limited use of both mostly has to do with them being slow and not the best trackers. Far more common is actually doing a fake CD, which is down, down, forward to get to crouch, and then using a full crouch move. Fake CD into while standing 1 is insane because of how much range it has, and while standing 1 is a mid poke that gives a very similar situation as down forward 1, but it also has string follow-ups to freeze people further. His while standing 4 is another great option, not quite the range as while standing 1, but it's faster and gives the same butt stun on counter hit that down forward 1 does. Or you can try to get some bigger damage with while standing 2 or while standing 3. There's even a little toe tap with full crouch down forward 1. Although we should also mention CD 1+2, which you'll see a fair bit. It's a quick, heavy-hitting headbutt that gives advantage even on block, so it's pretty useful. Either way, using his CD as a way to close distance and get those full crouch tools involved is very common. Now, he does have some raw mix-up potential from standing, namely via sidestep 4, which is a high crushing low launcher. It's very unsafe and only launches if it's close or if it hits counter hit, but given how often you want to be stepping in Tekken, it's always going to be a threat. You can use sidestep 1+2 as your mid option, which is a safe chunky hit, but you'll more often see down forward 3 since it's a safe mid launcher that's roughly the same speed. It does have short range, but having a safe mid launcher is a pretty big deal. His stances continue that trend. Shifting Clouds or STC only has one low, which is a good low, but because the stance has such a big startup, you have to rely on your opponent sitting there for a moment. Kempo also only has one low, which again is a good low, but because the stance moves backwards, your opponent has to be stuck or moving in on you for it to hit. But that emphasizes the general theme of what you're trying to do, which is use your pokes to get them to freeze or bait out a response. Using down back 1 is a very simple, easy example. You can go to both STC and Kempo from down back 1. By choosing Kempo, you're trying to go backwards to get out of the way of a challenge and then punish with either Kempo 2 or 3. With STC, well, STC has an auto parry, so that takes care of certain challenges, or if they sit there, use your STC 4 and mix it with STC 1, or use STC 3 to try to continue pressure on block. His back turn actually is more of a mix-up machine, with down 3 and down 4 being your low threats, and back turn 2-2 and back turn 1+2 being your major mid threats. You also have a command grab in back turn that gives you a legitimate 50-50 grab mix-up. But again, range is the big issue with all of these, so back turn is best after landing a hit like 1-2-2. When you're in the thick of it, it seems like Feng is doing a lot more than this, but it's really just a stick and move style and then leaning on evasive tools and whiff punishers to get the big damage, which, speaking of, let's chat about those tools. This is a defense section, and although we are somewhat continuing offense discussion, it's important to acknowledge that Feng's tools are a lot about active defense, which is why we'll discuss them here. But first, let's talk about more static options, namely block punishers. His 1-2-2 we mentioned as a strong jab punisher that also gives you the option to go back turn. 1-2-2 covers pretty much everything until you start seeing hop kick situations. Otherwise, back 1+2 is noteworthy, and it is faster than hop kick, but because it's much riskier on block than 1-2-2, you really need to be confident in the situation before using it, so you'll see it more often for whiff punishing. His full crouch is similarly simple. While standing 4 is your fastest option, then while standing 1-2, then your launch at while standing 3. But now for the fun stuff. Whiff punishing is pretty easy, it just depends on how much time you think you have. 1-2-2 and back 1+2 are extremely common, of course, but hop kick and while standing 3 are your go-to launchers, or even forward 3-4 if you need the range. We should emphasize while standing 3 because Feng has a lot of different ways to get to full crouch. Forward 4 back, for instance, which we haven't mentioned yet, is more or less a safe launcher because of the string options and how quickly he can turn around, but if you turn around into a crouch, while standing 3 is the perfect move to capitalize on any whiffed retaliation from your opponent. Speaking of retaliation, 1+2 is a very common parry attack. It's an unsafe mid on its own, but will parry normal highs and mids on startup, which you can then follow up for a full juggle. While standing 1+2 is very similar, but limited to punches, although it's safe on block in return. If you're looking to just get out of the way, up forward 2 is probably one of the most annoying counter hit tools out there. It's quick and has considerable lateral movement. Because of the spacing that often happens afterwards, it's more or less safe unless you just whiff it. He even has a sway back with back forward 1, although that is far riskier. The less risky sway back option is one we already mentioned, Kempo. It's not unusual to see Feng players that use this almost like a backdash, and then if you spot a whiff, mash out your punish. Either way, you can still easily set it up after any safe move on hit or block. For more traditional counter hit stuff, back 1 is another superbly annoying move. It's just as fast as a jab. At worst, it's only jab punishable, but if you land that sexy counter hit, you get yourself a free shoulder or a potential wall splat. It's always a threat. If you want something truly safe, you have standing 4, which is very similar, just a hair slower. If you're looking for crushes, look no further than the standard tools we already mentioned. Up forward 4, up forward 3, and up forward 1 are all good jumpers. Down back 3, down 2, sidestep 4, and crouch dash 1 are all good crouchers. You have similar options in stances too. For instance, Kempo 1 will high crush and Kempo 4 will low crush. Back turn down 3 is also really common to stop people trying to quickly poke you out of back turn with highs. And we also can't forget his armor move, forward forward 1+2, which is unsafe normally but can be held to give it advantage on block, so it serves a double purpose, which is a point worth emphasizing. Your best counter hit tools are often just normal tools you'll be using in the course of standard neutral or pressure play, which is also what makes them so easy to set up. A simple 1-2-2 punish can set up a back turn down 3. Landing down 4 or back 4 are good, easy back 1 setups. Even a blocked down forward 1 is a good back 1 setup. It's really just an easy mix and match with whatever counter hit tools are your favorite, so at least at first, don't feel like you have to overdo it in creativity to get mileage from those moves. So this brings us to everything else, which is a pretty broad category for Feng. It also allows for a little bit of individuality between players. If you want to play compact, you'll stick with most of what we already mentioned, but some other things worth consideration. Forward forward 2 is a really common, safe, long-range chunky mid. Forward slide 3 is very similar with a huge ground-hitting hitbox that's really useful for Oki and even has moments of both crouch and jump. Both forward 1+2 and down forward 3+4 are important homing tools. Both are safe, and forward 1+2 is also a flat-out launcher. 2 slide 1-1 is a launch string, and the first hit is safe, which has fueled debate about it being confirmable, but either way, you'll see Feng players who are very good at using it. Forward forward 3 is another good Oki tool, but can be good in neutral. It's just a little slow for that. Then you have all the crazy string stuff like 3 slide 4, so there's a lot to play around with beyond just the basics. Unless you're in back turn, Feng unfortunately doesn't have much of a grab game. However, both down forward 1+2 and 1+3 will side switch on break, so if your back is to the wall, they're worth it. At worst, you'll get away from the wall. As usual, we'll skip juggles, but check out the link in the video description below for some sample combos. Otherwise, the only item left is his Rage Drive, which is just a better version of back 1+2. Instead of being unsafe, the Rage Drive actually gives advantage on block, more so at the wall since it'll slam. But speaking of, it splats from way downtown and it does a little more damage, so it's a scary tool at your disposal. This brings us to the end of the primer. I'm hoping this information was succinct and helpful for getting a jump on the character, but feedback is always welcome. Be mindful that in-depth discussion for game plans and move attributes will be saved for intermediate guides, although since we have the more robust basics guides already for Tekken 7, true intermediate guides will be something to look out for with Tekken 8. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe and we'll see you next time.